Hello and welcome. I'm Debbie from So Easy, and today I'm going to talk you quickly through how to make the fit and flare dress. It's very easy and straightforward. It'll probably take you longer to cut out the pattern in the fabric than it will to sew this dress. So just a few features. It has short sleeves up here. The front and back neckline has a facing so that you get a nice smooth finish front and back around the outside. The top stitching here is optional. Some knits will behave better with a facing than others, and I was finding, despite a little bit of stay stitching on mine, I could still just see the edge of the facing around the front just here, so I've decided to just top stitch around. I don't think it looks out of place, but it holds that facing in place a bit nicer. It has design lines through the bodice and following on down to the skirt, so it does pull in a little bit at the waist, and then from the low part of the hips outwards it starts to flare out until you have a little bit more flare at the bottom of the skirt and just a gently curved hemline. So it's very nice and quick and easy to sew, and once you've got the fit right on this dress and you're happy with it, you could probably make a whole wardrobe of them in a weekend. So let's get started. So we don't need much in way of materials for this project. You'll need a heavier weight knit. I'm using a ponte knit. I used a plain ponte in the blue dress, the solid coloured one, and then I've gone for this crazy kind of tribal striped ponte knit for the one that I'm going to use in the video here. So I've made it really challenging for myself, trying to match up all these stripes across the panels, and it's probably going to go a bit wrong, but hey, it won't look any worse than a ready to wear dress, which never seems to match these days anyway. So you need some knit fabric. A heavier weight is going to pull the dress down to your body and smooth it in a lot nicer than a very, very light one. So don't go for anything like a tissue knit, but if you want a nice heavier weight jersey, that would do too. And then your pattern, of course, and your usual sewing supplies. And that's all we need. So let's get going. We'll have a look at the pieces that you need to cut for your dress. There are 6 panels in the dress. We have a centre back just here. You can tell this is the back because it has a lower scooped neckline, and then there's a back facing which is going to match. There's just one of those. Then you'll need some sleeves, and of course we have 2 matching sleeves. So if you have a print like mine, if you can match up the pattern, oh, I can see already mine's not quite right at the top. Oh well, it's going to be close. So 2 sleeves. Then you'll need a centre front. The centre front has a lower scoop just here, and obviously it looks here as if the shoulders are going to be very narrow, but actually another piece is going to join onto here in a minute, so don't worry that that's too narrow. And then we have our front facing, and again, of course, the facing looks as if it's wider up at the top here than the shoulder, but it will fit into both of the shoulders when they're there. So that's the facing that will go on the front of the dress. And then you have 4 of these side pieces, and remember, when you cut them, you'll need to cut 2 going in this direction and then turn over the pattern piece and cut 2 going in the other direction, because this is the armhole curve here, front and back, and obviously the same on the other side. These will be mirror images of each other, so you'll need 4 of these pieces. So now we need to assemble the front and the back of the dress, and each one is going to be 3 panels. You have your centre panel, either front or back, and the 2 side panels, and obviously you're going to match them right sides together with the armhole facing the outside like this. So that will be my armhole, the shoulder, the centre panel, and then this other panel with the armhole will go over on the other side, and we need to match them right sides together. It looks there as though my pattern is looking pretty good, so hopefully it won't turn out too bad after all. So just match these 2 sides. Obviously they have a slight curve in them, and they fit together like this, but when you put them on top of each other, you'll see the curves go opposite ways, but because it's a knit, you can easily just move these pieces to fit and pin along the length. So pin one side panel to one side, the other side panel to the other side. Once you've got all 3 panels pinned together, just open it out and check from the right side that it's looking as it should, that you have your neckline in the middle and you have obviously opposing armholes on either side. Just just because some of the pieces, they are a little bit confusing, and you could just pin them the wrong way. Okay, so once you have your 3 panels, this is my back. I need to do exactly the same for my front panels. I'm just going to pin the 3 front panels together and then stitch them. So we've got 4 long seams to sew from the top to the bottom, and I recommend that if you start one seam at the top and sew that way, that you also sew the other seam from the top down, because if you sew one in one direction and then the other in the other direction, you can have a little bit of movement in the fabric, and it can end up just a little bit off. If you sew them both in the same direction, you're less likely to have that, and it should hopefully hang a little bit neater. Okay, so complete your front and the back, put those 2 together, and then I'll see you back here. Once you've sewn the front and the back bodice of your dress, you want to press your seams towards the centre. And then our next step is to stabilise our neckline. So this is an optional step, but if you do have some of this knit stay tape, which is basically a tricot interfacing, it's fusible on one side and it comes on a roll. If you do have that, it's really good for stabilising edges where you might get stretching later on. So I've put some around the back neckline here, and also all the way around the front neckline of the dress. And when we sew our facing on, it just helps to keep it a little bit more stable and stop too much in the way of stretching. You can also put some on the shoulders if you want to, but this dress only has short sleeves, so I'm not too bothered about that. So our next step, once we have the stabilizer in place, is to attach our dress together at the shoulders. So we'll just pin and stitch the front to the back. And then press these shoulder seams towards the back of the dress. Our next step is to add in the sleeves, and if you would like to, at this stage you can iron on some of the interfacing, the knit stay tape to the bottom of the sleeve, and then when you turn that later on, it does give you a very nice crisp finish to the bottom of your sleeve. So if you'd like that, do that part now. And then we need to fit our sleeve into the armhole. So if you just pin, find the centre of the sleeve, match that up at the top there with the shoulder seam, and then pin the sleeve in place on both sides and stitch that into the armhole while the dress is still flat. Once your sleeves are set in, give it a press your seam allowances towards your sleeves, and then we can set this aside for now because we're going to work on our facing piece. So you have a back and a front facing which matches the neckline style of the dress, and you just need to match them up here at the shoulder seams. So we're using a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the dress, and therefore we use a 1/2 inch seam allowance also on the facing here and here. So I'll do that, and then we'll come back and we'll match it to the neckline of the dress. So the neckline facing is now sewn, and I've matched it up here at the shoulder seams, so these match, and then I've pinned around the back and the front of the neck. I'm now going to take this back over to the sewing machine and sew it on in one great big circle with our 1/2 inch seam allowance. There's a couple of things that you can do here. The first dress I made, I serged around here, and of course you end up with a very narrow seam allowance, and I do wonder whether having a larger seam allowance actually helps the facing lie flatter or not later on. So I think I'm going to do this with my regular sewing machine this time, and leave the seam allowances at the 1/2 inch with the regular machine, and we'll see if this one turns out any different. It'll be an interesting exercise, but if you like to use your serger, of course you can do that too. Now the neckline is sewn in place, what we need to do now is understitch, because what we want to happen when we wear it is for the neckline to fall nice and neatly on the inside of the dress like this, leaving a nice smooth edge, and ideally that the facing shouldn't be seen on the outside of the dress when we're wearing it. So what you need to do for understitching, I have got a separate link which I can send you to take a look, but basically we're going to stitch the facing to the seam allowance, so all the way around as you smooth everything out a little bit as you go, and you'll stitch through the seam allowance, both of them pressed up towards the facing, and catch the facing in it, so that when we turn on the original stitching line, that understitching is going to help this facing stay nicely to the inside. Again, this is an optional step, you don't have to carry this one out if you don't want to. So here's the finished neckline of our dress. You can see the facing just here and on the inside of the neckline just here. So I've given it a press and it's all sitting nice and smoothly, and when I've got the dress finished later on and I try it on, I'll see then whether I'm happy with the facing or whether I just want to go around again and catch it from the outside. You can either have it like this without any kind of seam, or if you're not bothered, then by all means sew around the perimeter of the neckline again, and it will just hold that facing in place so there's nowhere that's going to pop out at all when you're wearing the dress. Okay, so now it's time for us to move on, and all we need to do is do these side seams. So if you put the dress together, right sides together again, match up the underarm seams, match up the sleeve and the bottom, and pin along both sides. And you can do that on both sides and then complete your side seams for the dress. So my side seams are now sewn, and I've tried the dress on and checked for fit, and I'm happy with it. If you aren't, of course, alter your side seams, or you have these other seams that run down the bodice front and back too, so you can use those for shaping. If you want to add a little bit more definition to the waist, take a little bit off the hip, whatever you need to. So we're on the final home straight. Now we have to finish off the bottom of our sleeves, and that will be simple. We're just going to turn a ½ inch of fabric to the inside and stitch it. If you've used the knit stay tape, then you'll have that nice ½ inch stay tape there that you can use for your crease, and do that for both of the sleeves there. And then also, while you check the dress on and check for fit, see how much hem you need to change. I need to take a little bit off the bottom of mine, so I've just put a few pins in where I want my finished hemline to go, and of course I've got the stripes on my fabric to help me make sure that I keep this nice and even. So I'm just going to turn this up and finish it. Again, the same with the knit stay tape. You don't want to do all this work and then end up in the end with a really kind of wavy hem that doesn't behave. So you can always use the stay tape on your hems too. It's really quite inexpensive. You get a great big roll, and you may as well use it and prevent any misfortune at the end of your project with your hem. So I'm going to definitely do that with mine. And then that will be it. Our fit and flare dress will be completed. And I'm going to put a picture at the end of the finished dress. Actually, the pattern matching turned out pretty damned good. Even the facings match. So I've been pretty pleased. In fact, I'm glad that I've made one in a solid fabric, because the pattern matching on here is so good that, and it's such a busy print, that when I put the dress on, these seams really disappear. So that's quite a nice effect, that you get the shaping and the little bit of flare at the bottom, but without the obvious seaming. So you can either make it in a solid or go for a crazy print like me, and see which you prefer. In fact, why not make both? See you again at So Easy again soon. Bye bye.